And at 10, Springtrap. Now, this number is really meta, and that's why it's starting off the list. But this isn't a metaphorical or philosophical number as if you thought it was going to be. Springtrap has literally killed other versions of himself in the FAZBEAR Frights story of In the Flesh from the 5th FAZBEAR Frights book Bunny Call. After Matt hadn't play tested a VR game he was working on for a few days called Springtrap's Revenge, he came back to find piles of dead Springtraps that the AI had somehow spawned in order to have something to kill. It's absolutely horrifying, and it's just plain weird. Like, why would you spawn more versions of yourself in order to have something to kill? Like, isn't that just like a paradox? Like how you physically are unable to prevent yourself from being born, since if you do, you fade out of existence, but then you can't go back and prevent it. So like, you can't stop yourself from being born because then you can't stop yourself from being born. I mean, well, depending on what theories about time travel that you believe, whether you believe Back to the Future or Endgame. That also makes it impossible for your younger siblings to prevent you from being born, but the older ones can prevent the younger ones because they'd still be alive before you were conceived. So watch out, Jordan. And at 9, Hudson. Hudson is the protagonist of What We Found, the third story in the 8th FAZBEAR Frights book Gumdrop Angel. Hudson has short blonde hair with a pale beard and blue eyes. He also has straight white teeth. He has bruises and burns all over his body. He's 6'1" and skinny. Almost like me, except my teeth aren't white and I'm not 6'1", and I don't have a beard. But I have blue eyes and I'm skinny. Hudson is a security guard at the upcoming horror attraction of Fazbear's Fright. His life up to this point has been filled with nothing but tragedy. His father committed suicide and his mother remarried a man named Lewis who would physically abuse Hudson at nearly every chance he got. He also became the main target for bullies who would hold his head down while flushing a toilet. Hudson began to fail school, and instead of trying to help him, the teachers would instead call him names and tell him that he's dumb. Gotta love the public school system, am I right? The story would later reveal that Hudson's family home burned down with Lewis and his mother inside, killing them. While Hudson does burn in an oven at the end of the story, he was in essence driven there by Springtrap, who was the main antagonist of the story. So still a Springtrap victim. By the way, Hudson was also the one who set the fire that killed his mom and Lewis, so. And at 8, Jeremy. There aren't many glitch trap victims, so we can't really do one of those lists. But since Jeremy from FNAF VR was driven to suicide by Glitch Trap, who is William Afton's code form, I think it's close enough to deem a Springtrap killing. Jeremy from FNAF VR is the game tester who tested the game before Tape Girl, and is the one who Tape Girl found after he cut off his face using a guillotine paper cutter. This was thanks to William invading Jeremy's mind through the use of the VR game, which is still confusing to me, since unless you were connected in some form of Sword Art Online haptic suit, it shouldn't really be possible. We're only seeing the game with our eyes, not plugged in like the Matrix, but I don't know why I'm bothered by it. I mean, I'm literally talking about a game series where a man possessed by the spirit of a child exploded after somehow communicating while comatose, had then used his intense agony to possess a hard drive that then gets scanned to create an AI that allows this man to continue living. So I don't know why I'm getting caught up in semantics, honestly, but yeah. Jeremy. And at 7, Vanny. Vanny is the planned main antagonist of the next FNAF game Security Breach. There is not much we know about Vanny, but there are plenty of theories. Some believe Vanny to be the glitch trap controlled version of Vanessa, which would make sense. Some also believe that she was the girl who recorded the tapes in FNAF VR, aptly referred to as Tape Girl, who I literally just mentioned, which would also make sense. And while both of these are probably true, even if they aren't, somehow Vanny did fall under William's control, which in essence makes her a Springtrap victim, even if it was Glitch Trap who was controlling her, but he also would have manifested in that suit because he didn't want to relive the agony of being spring locked, so he was still basically Springtrap. Look, this was a hard list, okay, and I had to add this number at the end. I had to add it so that I had 10 points, okay, so chill for a minute and let me do my thing. And at 6, Charlie. Okay, so in a way, Charlie in the Twisted Ones novel is a victim of Springtrap, and by in a way, I'm gonna have to suspend my disbelief because she was still a robot. While the original Charlie was killed by William Afton, in the Twisted Ones, one of the 4 robotic versions of Charlie gets snatched by a twisted animatronic and gets killed, which only makes things more confusing when another version of Charlie, who is much older, shows up. But that's not the point. The point is that at this point, William had become Springtrap, and the twisted animatronics were his invention. So while yes, she was a robot, she was still a sentient robot who got snatched by an Afton creation after he had become Springtrap, so that's good enough for me. This was, like I said, Actually harder than I thought it was going to be. William doesn't do much killing after becoming Springtrap, because he's locked in a room for 30 years. Most of the damage was already done at that point, so please forgive a few leaps in logic or suspension of disbelief, please. Thank you. Halfway through into number 5, Matthew. Remember how earlier I talked about how Springtrap was killing himself in the Springtrap's Revenge VR game in the FAZBEAR FRIGHTS book Bunny Call? Well, not only does he do that, but he also tears the main character Matthew to shreds. Now, some do consider this Matthew to be a reference to MatPat of game theory, and it makes sense why. But what makes this bad is that the community considers this an M-Preg fanfiction, which I have to say, I enjoyed not knowing what that was until I had to ask my sister about it because it was everywhere online. She's really into fanfiction, it's kinda concerning. Anyway, basically Matthew in this story gets implanted with a baby Springtrap thanks to a program called itsaboy.exe, which literally ends up tearing him to shreds from the inside out. Hardly a fun experience, I would say. Yet some women go their whole lives wanting to give birth and have kids. But I mean, at least most of the time, they don't kill you from the inside out. Or rather, they don't usually claw at you and dig through your stomach. That's exclusive to Springtrap, I hope. In at 4, Henry. Henry is another case that is kind of like victim adjacent, and not in a sense where he was a victim because he killed Charlie like I said last time, but rather because Henry lets himself die in FNAF 6 in order to ensure that nobody remembers what William did. However, William does end up escaping, but Henry stayed put and let himself burn in the FNAF 6 fire because of Springtrap, and then it turned out that it was all for nothing, because nobody is standing in his way anymore. So honestly, while not directly killed by Springtrap or William, Henry is one of the biggest victims that William has. He took his family and his life, all for nothing, since it didn't actually put an end to his reign of terror. But maybe, like the ultimate custom night Samurai Freddy cutscene suggests, maybe Henry is also still alive, possessing an object looking to come back to keep pursuing that anime fox. At least, I wouldn't be surprised if Henry turned out to be Glamrock Freddy or something like that. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Gregory. Now, with Security Breach not releasing until late 2021, we can only speculate as to what happens to our next main character and our player, Gregory, in the next FAZBEAR game. However, it's entirely possible that Gregory ends up getting killed. Think about it. This is literally a kid who is fighting one of the FNAF universe's deadliest child serial killers, who has multiple animatronics out to find him and control over a security guard. Not only that, but it's entirely possible that Glamrock Freddy ends up betraying us and crushing us while we're inside of him. That sounded weird. It's not like we haven't been killed in the games before, or at least horribly mutilated like we were in Sister Location. And we as the player die in FNAF 6 along with Henry. So Scott is not new to killing off the main player in his games. But also, realistically, he's a kid. And like, what's he gonna be able to do against a literal sentient code? And if he lives, there will be someone to tell the cops what happened. And if William was paying them off, he certainly wasn't anymore, so maybe they can have an actual investigation this time. But only if Gregory lives, so he's probably gonna die. And ultimately, in at number 2, Michael Afton. Now, this may be confusing to some of you since Michael doesn't die until FNAF 6, but come on, this guy is the biggest Springtrap victim of them all. Let's just recap what happens to Springtrap's own son, for God's sake. He kills his brother, assuming that's actually what happened. He then learns about his father's killing spree and tries to right his wrongs. While doing so, he is haunted by the spirits of the children his father has killed, and then learns about how his sister has possessed an animatronic after getting scooped so many years ago. Then he learns that he is probably a robot and gets ripped open by a scooping machine. After this, a giant robot amalgamation of parts fills his body and lets him bruise and rot while wearing him like a suit after Barney Stinson had a mental breakdown, and then he vomits that entire animatronic back out. Can you imagine how painful that would be? The 7-foot tall mass that is entered coming out of your throat. But somehow, he's still alive. Then he finds a job posting about a new FAZBEAR location and applies for it, but then has to salvage animatronics that include the thing that ruined his body, his long dead sister, one of his father's earliest victims, and his father, all of which may kill him if he's not on high alert. This man has suffered probably the most in the entire series. That's absolutely horrifying. Finally, in at number 1, William Afton. Yes, here we are again. While I already said Springtrap himself as the first number, I'm gonna round it off with some more self-reflection. Like I said, this list was hard. However, the most important victim Springtrap could have had would have been William Afton himself. Let's remember, Springtrap isn't a separate character. He is the body of William Afton that got spring-locked after he hastily put on his murder costume in the back room of an early FAZBEAR location after accidentally releasing the souls of his original victims. Whether it was to make them feel scared or to make himself feel more powerful, his haste coupled with the moisture from the leaking ceiling caused the spring lock mechanisms to fail, shooting thousands of metal parts deep into his body. It would have killed him if not for the spirit that had possessed him that was intentionally keeping him alive. That's brutal. I mean, he absolutely deserves it, don't get me wrong, but that has to be included on this list. I mean, I was told that William should have been on the purple guy victims list, so there you go. Here he is. And at number 10, dead. Until the release of the 5th FAZBEAR Frights book Bunny Call, most people understandably believed that William Afton died during the spring locking we see in FNAF 3, and that Springtrap was his possessed animatronic. While I heavily debated this, a load of people got mad at me for it, since I kept saying that Springtrap wasn't an animatronic, that he was William piloting a suit. But a load of comments every time I said that all flipped on me because Springtrap wasn't there and he's dead in the suit. No, he wasn't. I stood by that, and it was revealed to be the case in the Man in Room 1280. You best believe I was celebrating when I heard about that. Oh, it felt so good to be right. I saw that and I just started dancing. I was living my life, bro. It was great. Look, I've suggested a few outlandish things, but this was the first thing I was very adamant about, and I was right. Springtrap wasn't an animatronic because William was alive piloting the suit. I remember one comment said, "Oh, so you expect him to be alive in a room without food or water for 30 years? And I remember responding to that, saying that like there could be stuff in the storage room, or, you know, because someone living for 30 years is totally unrealistic in a series about animatronics possessed by dead kids. Then at 9, Scraptrap. When Scraptrap was introduced in FNAF 6, it confused a lot of people. I mean, his body structure made him look like a totally different animatronic. And this led a lot of people to believe that this was actually a different person. That Scraptrap was Michael and William was Springtrap, or the other way around. That William was Scraptrap but Michael was Springtrap. And that's not the first time this has happened either. But I'll get to that. The final monologue secured Scraptrap as William, since Henry says, "For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell is open to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend." Which is obviously a reference to William, since Michael is not an old friend of Henry. At least I don't think so. And I don't think he should be going to hell. Although it'd be nice to see him there. We could like party. That's my only dance move. It used to be this, but now it's this. In at 8, Survivor. William always comes back. It's one of his defining features. But we predicted William's survival of the FNAF 6 fire thanks to some very clever redditors. Some theorists noticed that the final monologue in FNAF 6 had engulfed the animatronics in flames. Well, all of them aside from one Sir William Afton, Scraptrap, who was instead in front of the flames. This was proven to be true in FAZBEAR Frights Book 5, Man in Room 1280, where William lays in the hospital in a coma after the fire, with horrific burns all over his body and the Scraptrap suit no longer surrounding him, so the fire must have caught him to cause that severe of damage. Although we had thought that he had escaped mostly unscathed. William only dies after being brought to a FAZBEAR warehouse when he then explodes violently all over a pastor who wants to grant him his last request. And at 7, Midnight Motorist. The Midnight Motorist minigame is probably the biggest confusion point for anyone trying to figure out FNAF 6. Until this point, the game is clear and concise, providing us with explanations for plenty of other things in the series, like the other characters' masks during FNAF 3's Happiest Day minigame. But while the secret of Midnight Motorist has yet to be mentioned, the game itself is very interesting, since in the game files, Midnight Motorist isn't called Midnight Motorist, it's called Later That Night. And considering how we know the guy who killed Charlotte drives a purple car, and it happened at night, this only goes to further that theory. And the Later That Night could just be his drive home. I mean, he is driving fairly frantically, like maybe someone had seen him. And in the secret, we do rush to see if our child is home, so maybe we thought that we saw our kid. So we rush home to hope he didn't see us, but he isn't there. But honestly, my dad drives like this on the highway sometimes. There was at one point, he was driving me home, and there was an airport taxi. He was swerving all over the highway. My dad ended up boxing him in. He was stuck behind a car. He was stuck behind a car in front of him, and then this was us beside him. So he ends up swerving right in front of us. He cuts hard across 4 lanes of traffic to get off to the exit, and my dad has to swerve, and we almost hit the median. It was my closest near-death experience, that I remember at least. Apparently, as a toddler, I tried to run out onto the street. I've known the world was cruel since day one. In its sixth, first victim. Until the release of Ultimate Custom Night, we thought we knew the order in which William had killed his victims, with the first one being Charlotte, Henry's daughter outside the pizzeria before he started using the golden Bonnie suit, and that she gave life to the other animatronics. I mean, it made complete sense. It explained why the kill was so different and how the give life minigame worked, but now, thanks to Ultimate Custom Night, we know that Chica was the first victim. Susie? Really? Why? Honestly, it makes me mad because the series made so much more sense when the first victim was Charlotte, and it could have helped us get an idea of William's motivations since Charlotte is a more significant kill than Susie. My sister has been watching a lot of Criminal Minds, so I feel like I've picked up on a few things. But unfortunately, that isn't the case anymore. We were proven wrong thanks to Scott and his love for complete and utter chaos. Halfway through into number 5, Phone Guy. Ah yes, the original theory. The one that started us all on the path to dedicating too much of our time to uncovering the hidden secrets of Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh, just Matt, Pat, and I? In all seriousness, this is the theory that got me to look closer to the Five Nights series. And if Matt Pat hadn't suggested that Phone Guy was the purple guy, the series I don't think would have expanded as much as it did. This theory came from several factors. One was that the Phone Guy openly admits his love for Foxy, which we can see with Purple Guy smiling during the Foxy Go 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 minigame. Phone Guy also admits his distrust of the puppet, who we at the time assumed to be the first victim, and the first animatronic with sentience. So Phone Guy describing it as always thinking certainly would put some suspicion on him. The object in Purple Guy's hand also took the rough shape of a phone, at least for 8-bit standards. All of this evidence led us to the conclusion that Phone Guy was the purple guy, and honestly, I think that's what Scott originally intended, until he decided to expand the series with some books that introduced William Afton as a character into the series. From that point on, just like William, Scott's ideas changed. In at 4, Mustard Man. The Mustard Man is the character we play as in the Midnight Motorist minigame, one that we can only see if we take a secret exit around halfway through the playtest, where we get out of the car and try to go into a location called Junior's and then head home to find that our son has broken his window and escaped his room. The most confusing part of FNAF 6 though has to be this fan named Mustard Man. No character until this point had been associated with that color. It was even made explicitly clear in the Freddy files that your character in this minigame isn't purple. There are two prevailing theories about this guy though. One states that this is William Afton before he started killing or something similar, because the minigame and his secret don't have to be at the same time. He could have been driving and the minigame could be like a flashback. The other is that this could in fact be Henry, the father of Charlotte. I mean, there isn't really much to go off of, only that it may be William because of the two sons, one watching TV wearing a gray shirt like Mike from the FNAF 4 minigames, who then goes back home to watch Immortal and the Restless after work in sister location, and the similar color of like the Mustard Man with the I will put you back together text color from FNAF 4, but it may also be Henry's home because there are footprints outside the window which look an awful lot like Glitchtrap's feet, but Glitchtrap is again just sentient code. We also never hear about Henry having more kids than Charlotte. It's weird. Also, I'm glad Charlotte's gone because it doesn't feel as weird when I say Charlotte was murdered. Getting close to the end into number 3, Mic Trap. The Mic Trap theory came on the rise after Sister Location's secret ending, where Michael makes his speech of, "Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now, but something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in the shadows. There's only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you." After saying, "I'm going to come find you" again, Springtrap appears at a burnt FAZBEAR fright. Why does this cause such a debate? Because some fans assumed that Springtrap appearing meant it was Springtrap who was talking, causing them to think that Mike was in fact the one in the Springtrap suit, hence the name Mic Trap. This however was simply to illustrate that Springtrap survived the fire and that he was in fact findable. Since Scott said in a Reddit/Steam post to check out MatPat's conclusion on the debate, and MatPat had concluded that it was Springtrap. Since in FNAF 2's minigame he was able to drive, and if he was Michael, I mean like how could we be playing as him in Sister Location? Penultimately in at number 2, Pink Guy. The purple versus pink guy debate is the Mike versus Will Trap debate of the early FNAF days. Back when all we had to worry about was different colors and not like 14 different purple characters. This debate came after FNAF 2's Foxy Go 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 minigame, where some fans believed the guy standing in the corner all smiley while Foxy discovered a group of dead kids was a couple shades lighter than the purple guy we saw killing kids outside the pizzeria. This, combined with the interior and exterior facts of their killings, got them named Purple Guy and Pink Guy. However, this was ultimately put to bed when the strategy guide known as the Freddy Files was released and stated in the Foxy Go 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 minigame, quote, quote, "Here you'll play as Foxy. Leaving the previous room, you enter a room full of children as party poppers go off. When the last one goes off, you return to your starting position and must make your way to the kids again, and then again. The last time you do, purple guy is visible in the lower left corner of the room. He's smiling. In the next room, the children are dead. This post-death minigame ends with a Foxy jump scare." You notice how it said purple guy is visible? There you go. Finally, in at number 1, Hell. Ah yes, my homeland. I mean, the theory that we all believed to be set in stone, until Bunny Call came out. What's this book's deal with ruining so many things we thought we knew about the series? Anyway, the original Ultimate Custom Night theory was that Cassidy was torturing William in hell, or in purgatory on his way to hell, and making him relive all of his crimes because they hated him so much, hence the title of The One You Should Not Have Killed. This was evidenced by multiple things, including Henry's speech at the end of FNAF 6, but then the man in room 1280 comes along and instead shows us that it was simply William being tortured in a coma while he was in the hospital. Remarkably similar to how we perceived Crying Child to die in FNAF 4, which is absolutely crazy to say the least, and very poetic in a way. I mean, it's messed up since the dude ends up exploding in a warehouse, but at least the line of "rest your own soul" makes sense now, since torturing William was preventing the spirit from keeping him alive from passing on to their own life. Because, you know, if he was already dead, why would you bother? I personally still think it's Crying Child, not Cassidy, but who knows? Maybe Crying Child's name is Cassidy? I doubt that though. And at 10, Henry. Now there are many ways to consider Henry a victim of the purple guy, but he's first because not many of them are as direct as others. While we do see Henry get killed by a baby in FNAF World, in the main series games he lives on in FNAF 6, where he then gets burnt in a fire. Unless baby kills him in the FNAF 6 location before the fire can, since, you know, he cut her off earlier, but that's still just speculation. However, Henry was also the victim of purple guy's crimes when Charlotte died, as seen in FNAFs 2 and 6, as well as in the books, since Henry lost his book daughter Charlie to William when she was only 3 years old. Remember, when someone takes a life, the one who dies isn't the only victim. Their family and friends, anyone who loved them, are a victim as well. This also extends to Henry's wife, who we don't know the name of as far as I know, since she may still be alive in the games. And at 9, Gabriel. Gabriel was one of the original 5 missing children from the first ever incident that we learned about in the games. We believe his soul passed into the Freddy animatronic based on the gravestone ending and the placement of the FNAF 3 heads. Gabriel hasn't really ever gotten much of a description, aside from a brief mention in the books, but that description could also be referencing Jeremy, and it's just based on Crying Child from FNAF 4's 8-bit minigames, so there isn't really much validity to it. But I wonder how Gabriel feels about being the mascot of the company in essence, cause, you know, with over 25 versions of the character being present throughout the separate games, you're a pretty popular fellow. I originally had a theory that we played as someone named Gabriel in FNAF VR, since we ended up getting stuffed into the Freddy animatronic in the pizza party ending, but I think that Gregory from Security Breach will be a better Gabriel comparison, especially with this whole hiding in Glamrock Freddy thing. And at 8, Susie. Susie was the first to die, which is pretty horrifying when you think about it, but also kinda liberating if you think about it in another way. Horrifying because, like, you know, you get killed out of nowhere and that sucks hard. But liberating because, while yes, you're dead, you also dead, so you don't really have to worry about anything else. Well, I suppose not in this case, since they go on to possess the animatronic, but like, they don't have to worry about anything in their future, like just getting revenge on their killer. And honestly, that sounds like the life. Like, not having to pay rent and then just doing everything in your power to stop a serial killer. That sounds like my kind of vacation. But nevertheless, being the first to die is a pretty serious thing. We know she was the first thanks to Withered Chica's voice line in Ultimate Custom Night, and keep in mind that the Withered animatronics are the original ones after being decommissioned when the restaurant closed prior to FNAF 2, since FNAF 2 is still a prequel and one of the first games in the timeline, so she is Withered Chica, even if she's also Chica. Gotta love the games. And at 7, Fritz. Fritz is also one of the original 5 missing children, being the victim who possesses everyone's favorite animatronic, Foxy. I guess in a way it was meant to be, given that both of their names start with an F and are shorter than their other names. The others actually also have similar names to their animatronics as well. Gabriel has the same amount of letters as FAZBEAR, Jeremy has the same amount of letters as Bonnie, and Susie and Chica have the same amount of letters as well. That's freaking weird, man. But not much else is known about Fritz. There originally was a theory that Fritz was a good guy who wanted to help the player in FNAF 1, but that was debunked in Ultimate Custom Night during like an April Fool's update or something, where Foxy's mechanics were changed to just like block one of the doors instead of kill you. Like, this was actually a joke though, since other mechanics were referencing other theories as well, like Phone Guy being Springtrap, and like, cause well, Springtrap couldn't be moving when Purple Guy was talking, as well as like Nightmare Freddy making you wake up from your nightmare, and that was referencing to Dream Theory. I mean, like, I wish I could wake up from this nightmare though. Oh wait, this is real? I talk about FNAF on the internet daily. That's actually a thing? I'm not having a nightmare? Oh great. And at 6, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was an unintentional victim of the purple guy, given that Elizabeth was in fact his daughter. In the aftermath of his murder den closing, Afton set up shop in a new restaurant he owned called Circus Baby's Pizza World. At least one that he started opening. Where the feature animatronics were actually giant murder robots hungry for the flesh of children. Because, you know, that's what this series has come to at that point. He warned his kids to stay away from the animatronics, especially his daughter Elizabeth, since she had such a fascination with the main star baby, but she didn't listen. So in a moment of ultimate regret, she done got herself scooped, basically insta-killing her while baby's arm grabbed her, pulled her in, and then crushed her and put her in a storage unit. While he didn't kill her directly, he still killed her, and then even victimized himself since, you know, it was his daughter that got scooped, and William's also a victim because he killed his daughter. But then this leads him to discover possession at the hands of Agony, but I don't think that he knows that it's Agony, but then that completely changes his motive, so he goes on to commit more murders. It's a pivotal death in the purple guy chronology, or story. I fight through in at number 5, Vanny. Vanny is kind of a different victim in the sense that she isn't dead, but she has been controlled by Afton in the form of a mind virus that is just pretty damn ridiculous even for the FNAF series. But presumably getting caught by testing the FNAF VR game, or maybe through FNAF AR, she gets partially controlled by William. Hence the potential double personality that we see as hinted at through the FNAF AR emails. But this could also just be Tape Girl that we hear in FNAF VR, who is the one who gives you false information about how to beat Glitch Trap. Vanny, we know, is a victim of the purple guy since, well, he's been the only killer in the series up until this point, and she wears a fabric bunny suit, alluding to the fact that William had his spring bunny suit that turned him into Springtrap and, you know, the whole Glitch Trap thing. Gotta love them parallels. This is how serial killers are caught, though. Like, change your MO every once in a while. They only catch the stupid criminals, so don't be stupid. I mean, don't be a criminal. Especially, just don't do it. And at 4, Jeremy's. As I said in the Souls Trapped in Animatronics video, Jeremy is one of the biggest troll names in FNAF history, being used for 3 separate characters, which, I mean, doesn't sound like a lot, but for FNAF it is. However, only 2 of them are the direct victims of Purple Guy. Jeremy is the name of one of the original missing children, and as I said earlier, he goes on to possess Bonnie. The other Jeremy is a playtester for the Freddy FAZBEAR Virtual Experience, the game we tested in FNAF VR, the one who tested it before Tape Girl, who ends up finding the Glitch Trap anomaly and causes him to go mad. And by going mad, I genuinely mean, like, absolutely psycho. Jeremy ends up cutting off his own face. But I mean, like, that's also interesting because, like, Withered Bonnie, the Withered Bonnie animatronic that we see in FNAF 2 is missing his face. And it's weird because Withered Bonnie is the Bonnie that's possessed by the missing children's incident Jeremy. Now, like, I don't know if that means anything or if it's intended or if it's just coincidence, but knowing this series, I'm always worried that, like, the smallest detail is gonna have the biggest consequence. And at 3, Cassidy. Cassidy is probably who you'd expect to be number 1 on this list. You know, the generally assumed, the one you should not have killed. The missing children's victim who went on to possess Golden Freddy. Cassidy is described in the novels as a young girl with long black hair, which is also the description of the only human to appear in the FNAF survival logbook, or security logbook, I call it both. The name Cassidy was also discovered in that book, when a Reddit theorist going by the username DPowerful1 took wrong or highlighted numbers from various pages and put those into word search and basic, like, in coordinates, and then he ended up finding the name Cassidy, which has got to be the most complicated thing in history. Like, we dig through source code and we put audio files through goddamn spectrograms to try to find clues, but even this was too much for this series. Like, I don't know why I had to go and make things so complicated. Penultimately, in at number 2, Charlotte. Charlotte is one of the most troublesome victims Purple Guy has had. Being the 6th victim, Charlotte gets killed outside the pizzeria, despite desperate attempts from her father, Henry, to prevent this, mainly by creating a security animatronic designed like a puppet to protect other kids but treat her as a priority. You know, he's a parent, I get it. However, when it gets trapped in its box, it's unable to make it out to Charlotte in time to save her. So in another attempt, the puppet saves her in another way, allowing her Agony to reach out and take hold of the animatronic. As the puppet, Charlotte then goes on to share her gift of the second chance with the other animatronics, bringing them to life as well, resulting in William's ultimate undoing. In a way, Charlotte is really the one you should not have killed, since if he had spared her, maybe he wouldn't have lost his life in the end, or been spring locked. So, yeah, shouldn't have done it. Finally, in at number 1, us. Now, this is why Cassidy isn't number 1. No matter what, we are a victim of the purple guy, and not in any philosophical way either. We are a direct victim of the purple guy, or William Afton, or GREGORY, or whatever you want to call him. Since, thanks to FNAF VR, no matter what you do, you end up losing at the end of the game. You either merge with him and join him on stage, or you complete the ritual only to get locked away in your own mind as William walks free in your body, or the easier one, we get stuffed into Freddy at the end of the pizza party minigame. But if you end up collecting all 16 tapes and actually fully complete the game, you're a victim of the purple guy. Like, he uses your body to commit whatever comes next. I mean, we could be Vanny, we could be Tape Girl giving it another shot, we could be some random bystander, but either way, we the player get gotten by this toxic, poisonous grip that is the purple guy. So yeah, I'm gonna put myself at number 1. In at 10, William Afton. Before Sister Location's release, we could only speculate as to the name of the individual we knew as SPRINGTRAP. Tons of names were made. Dave, Dylan, Trent, Kyle, Steven, you name it, and someone had claimed that this was SPRINGTRAP's name. However, the introduction of SPRINGTRAP's true identity, William Afton, was actually in the FNAF novels, more particularly The Silver Eyes, the first novel in the series. This was mostly shown to the masses by Matt Pat and his theory on the subject, but the response was actually practically divided, with a load of people glad that we finally at least had some form of canon name for the character, and others upset because Matt Pat had used the books for his theory, which don't share the same continuity as the games, despite sharing the same canon of Five Nights at Freddy's. This theory, however, was ultimately confirmed to be true during Sister Location's starting scene, where we first hear Afton speak, talking about Baby's various features.
There's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state-of-the-art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream.
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
In at 9, Eternal Torment. Ultimate Custom Night was a really interesting turning point in the FNAF series. The original Afton storyline was finally at a close, and this game was the ultimate capstone to that, with some important lore hints in the form of voiced lines that play when you get killed. However, this game still fits into the FNAF story, and serves as a link between the original story and the new one, the new story being Afton trying to escape the video game world that he got himself locked in. But we originally interpreted this game all wrong, since we initially thought that William was burning in hell, or at least stuck in purgatory. But as all Supernatural fans know, purgatory is just a giant forest where monsters kill each other for all eternity, not a security guard office where you have to fight off countless animatronics. But this idea, despite being solid with incredible amounts of evidence, was proven wrong thanks to the original final book in the FAZBEAR FRIGHTS series called Bunny Call. Wow, Scott really likes to act like he's ending things with SPRINGTRAP and then just totally doesn't. However, in this book, the story of the man in room 1280 tells the true tale of what's going on in this game. Afton is in the hospital, horrifically burned after the FNAF 6 fire, and is stuck in a coma, much like Crying Child was in FNAF 4. Eventually he wakes up though, which I'm guessing is him beating 50-20 mode, and is brought to a FAZBEAR warehouse where he promptly explodes and possesses a hard drive. Fun. And at 8, Bribery. The fact that William wasn't caught, or that everything seems to go so perfectly for him, has to have an explanation. It's not like this guy just got that lucky. No way, not in Five Nights at Freddy's. There has to be a reason behind why the cops didn't check inside the bleeding and horrifically smelling animatronics. We know that this is the case because the newspapers from FNAF 1 confirm that the restaurants shut down thanks to animatronics smelling like death and leaking mucus and blood. Here's a quote from one of those clippings. Police were contacted when parents reportedly noticed what appeared to be blood and mucus around the eyes and mouths of the mascots. One parent likened them to reanimated carcasses. How were the bodies not found then? They could have tested the blood, found that it was similar to the parents if they didn't have any of the kids' DNA on file, and then easily have gotten a warrant to take the animatronics. But they didn't. The dead bodies were still never found and Afton was released. How the actual hell is that possible? The only way I can see, personally, is bribery. Like, William had to have been bribing these people, and they had to know that he was locked in the back room of FAZBEAR FRIGHTS, because why would they tear down a random wall to find that animatronic? It's impossible. There's no way that he just got released out of random chance. No one is that lucky. No. And at 7, the arm. We don't know too much about the upcoming FNAF game Security Breach. So far we know that there are at least 5 new animatronics and a whole pizzaplex to explore, and the game will have a day and night cycle, but that Afton will also somehow be involved thanks to the appearance of Vanny, who will serve as the antagonist to this game. However, in the gameplay trailer released for the game by PlayStation, at the very end we see a seemingly metallic arm reach out from behind some boxes. Some believe this to be the arm of the Stitch Wraith, others think that this is William. I think it's the latter, since, you know, we can see the reflection of purple light coming off the arm. And Springtrap, aka good ol' Willie Afton, is known for being the purple guy. This combined with the fact that he's trying to escape the game indicates that he will in fact be successful. And his goal of achieving eternal or everlasting life will be complete, since now he exists as Code, and can, I'm guessing, jump from animatronic to animatronic. And that's probably going to end up being a feature in the game after Security Breach, if there is one. And at 6, Glitch Trap. Glitch Trap is very clearly meant to be William Afton in his code form. As Tape Girl says, he was created after they scanned a hard drive they were given that was meant to help with coding the AI for the animatronics. However, while this is evidently William, it's theorized by many that this is meant to be based on the original suit that Afton wore to lure kids away, or at least try to, since thanks to the newly released FAZBEAR, which I covered in detail in another video, link is in the iCard, we now know that the first animatronics William built, or at least some of the first, had claws that could hide away items, which is a feature only present in the Funtime animatronics. So the Funtimes were built before the spring-lock suits used in Fredbear's Family Diner, at least they could be. So this would have to have been a suit used at the company before they even had animatronics. And he was also planning on going on a killing spree already, so we can always assume the worst. Maybe there are more kids that went missing out of their homes like suggested in the Midnight Motorist minigame. Who knows? Halfway through it at number 5, Survivor. The issue of how William was surviving so much was really on everyone's mind. He made it through being spring-locked, he survived 2 fires, he was really somehow the most iron-willed individual in the series, and we have no idea why. Or at least, we had no idea why. The main theory was that William had injected himself with Remnant, which is the molten form of metal possessed by a soul, which would have been the original 5 animatronics. This idea, from what I can tell, came from the books, since the novel version of William becomes incredibly obsessed with Remnant and trying to use it to grant himself everlasting life, like some weird kind of soul vampire, also known as a ginger. This seemed like a solid idea though, and explained away many of the random things he got through, but had one crucial flaw. The only way to destroy Remnant is with a fire, so he would have had to make it out of the FNAF 3 fire unscathed, which as we saw in Sister Location's ending, he didn't, since he was literally at the burnt down FAZBEAR Fright. Does anyone else find it slightly annoying that FAZBEAR Fright is both the name of the FNAF 3 location and the series of books revolving around like the short stories? Because I certainly do. It's very annoying. And at 4, Mic Trap. The Mic Trap theory came out after Sister Location's secret ending, where Michael makes his speech with the famous line of "I'm going to come find you." After saying "I'm going to come find you" a second time, Springtrap appears at the burnt down FAZBEAR Fright. This one little moment caused some fans to assume that Springtrap appearing meant that it was Springtrap who was talking, making them think that Mike was in fact the one in the Springtrap suit. Hence the name Mic Trap. This, however, was simply to illustrate that Springtrap survived the fire, like we had been assuming, since Scott said in a Reddit or Steam post to check out MatPat's conclusion on this debate, and MatPat had concluded that it was William in the Springtrap suit. Since in FNAF 2's minigames he was able to drive, and if he was Michael, we couldn't have been him in Sister Location. It wouldn't make sense. But that wouldn't be the end of the Mic Trap debate. Haha, just wait until the next game comes out. Getting close to the end in number 3, Survived. After FNAF 3's ending, when we learned about the fire, we thought that that was it, at least for around 20 seconds, until people started brightening the final image like we know to do with FNAF by now. And that's when we saw Springtrap sitting in the shadows behind the stuffed animal that was the image for the news article about the fire. Now, I have no idea how the photographer didn't see that, or if William was bribing news outlets or whatever, but this is absolutely terrifying. And it really is what started us down the rabbit hole of having to jump through several hoops to find more lore clues and ideas. Brightening this one image made us have to comb through the files of a mobile game. Think about that. Anyway, this image set us on the path to thinking William survived the fire and that this would not be the last FNAF game. I don't know if this was supposed to be the point of the Easter egg, like if it was somehow to allow for more games in the series if Scott wanted to, but hey, either way, it happened. And here we are, 5 games, 15 books, and more later. Still questioning everything about this series, so time well spent. Penultimately in at number 2, Spring vs. Scrap. Then Ultimate Custom Night came out, and the Mike vs. Wooltrap debate was on the rise again, thanks to the introduction of SPRINGTRAP, who people thought was Scott adding a new character so that both Afton men could be Springlock victims. This was incredibly frustrating for me, but it was ironed out when Scott referred everyone to MapPat's conclusion on the debate, like I said before, cause you know. And in Ultimate Custom Night, SPRINGTRAP says, "I always come back," which turns into William's signature line because let's be honest, he does always come back. So that seemingly settled it, but there are for some reason still fans who believe that SPRINGTRAP and or SPRINGTRAP is still Michael, which just boggles my mind. But when people are dead set on something, you can't really convince them otherwise, just like how you can't convince me that Mike isn't a robot, even though in this debate there is confirmation that Spring and SPRINGTRAP are William, but hey. Finally, in at number 1, Survive ×2. William surviving the FNAF 6 fire though was much harder to believe when it came out at first, at least before Bunny Call was released. However, some fans seem to note that during the final cutscene of FNAF 6 during Henry's speech, while the other animatronics were engulfed by flames, SPRINGTRAP was ahead of them.
There's more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
This was especially hard to believe given that we thought Ultimate Custom Night took place in hell, which is really impossible to go to unless you die. Well, with me being the exception. I party with Satan on the regular. He strangely can't hold his liquor. Either way, this was all proven to be true when Bunny Call was released and William was in the hospital in room 1280, which I have to say has got to be one of the biggest trolls in the entire series, or like at least like one of them. Because like, come on Scott, really? You had to do that to me? To us? Yeah, thank you, Scott.